Hi, everybody. Thank you for attending this talk on fellowship application prepared by the CAR RFS Education Subcommittee. My name is Tasha and I will be your host tonight. I'm sorry for my accent. I'm from the French side, so we hope you will enjoy this new format. Tonight we have four speakers who will share their unique fellowship application process. Each speaker will have 15 minutes to present followed by a Q&A session at the end. This talk is open to everyone, but it's focused on fellowship application by Canadian residents. International applicants to Canada Fellowship are welcome to attend. However, please note that the difference in the application process for international applicants will not be covered. Please note that this talk is also being recorded except for the Q&A session. So feel free to turn on your cameras. During the Q&A session, you're welcome to unmute your mic to ask your question or type them in the chat. I can read them for you. So without further ado, we will start with our first speaker. So Francine, you can go.
Thank you. Hi, guys. My name's Francine. I'm one of the 50 residents here at Dalhousie. And I'm just going to share my screen. Can you guys see this? Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so I applied to IR and you apply in Canada, like as you guys know, like 2 years in advance. So I've actually been like accepted to the U of T IR fellowship for like almost a year now, and it's starting soon on July 1st. But I do apologize if any of this is outdated. Like, please correct me and interrupt me if any of this is incorrect. But I tried to check like the CAIR website and make sure that everything was up to date. Okay, so I just wanted to put in one tiny slide about like what got me interested in IR. So full disclosure, my dad is actually an interventional radiologist. And so he definitely was the person who made me want to do some electives in medical school. And so I spent some time when I was in Ottawa at medical school with the IR faculty, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Also, I'm like illiterate and I can't read books. So I spend a lot of time on social media, and there were two really good YouTube channels that actually got me interested in IR. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Dr. Cellini or Dr. John and Dr. Chris, but these are really good YouTube channels. And they go through like day in the life videos, and they also like walk you through certain procedures. So I thought that was super helpful, and it definitely gave me some inspiration to apply to IR. And why I chose IR over other diagnostic specialties. I just really enjoyed the patient contact. I find it's something I miss a lot when I'm on diagnostic rotations. And it's not to say that if you want to do IR, you don't have to be that kind of physician who wants to have full day clinics, like see 40 patients. You can definitely do this career and have like more limited patient contact, or you can make it whatever you want. You can do like a full vascular clinic. Like, there's very different ways to practice IR in Canada, and it differs like hospital to hospital, even like within the province as well. So really, like, the career is super variable in terms of like how much patient contact you want and how much like follow up with patients you want. So I definitely like that like versatility. And then of course, the main reason why I chose to do IR was the procedures. I just wanted to also touch on that, like in terms of going out and getting jobs in the future, like how many procedure days would you get for like an IR job? So just as an example, I just wanted to give you guys, because I had no clue like really what I was getting into when I was applying for an IR fellowship. I really didn't know what the job market was like, or really like, would I be doing 5 days of IR a week, or would it be more like 1 to 2? So out of like the 4 hospitals that I've spoken with so far as an R5, because they will find you an R5 and offer you jobs. Like right now in Canada, there's like a huge market for radiologists. So some of the jobs that they have like proposed at certain hospitals here on the East Coast, I can't speak for anything further west, but you can do like 1 day IR a week, or you can do like 3 or 4, even at small community hospitals. So really, like, you can create whatever kind of career you want after doing this 1 year fellowship. And I just want to clarify that in case anyone was like a bit scared to do it because they thought it was going to be like 5 days a week with on-call every night. Like it doesn't have to be like that. Yeah, so in terms of the IR fellowship, there's currently 2 tracks in Canada. So of course there's a traditional 1-year fellowship, and I believe the majority of the programs in Canada are still that 1 year. But there is something new called the IR residency. So there's like 2 programs in Ontario and 3 programs in Quebec, I believe, that are doing this. And I just want to go over like what's the difference between them. So the IR residency, really, you guys stand to gain a lot from doing this. So there's not much difference in like the day-to-day work when you're doing these IR residencies. And I made sure before I signed up for it at Toronto. But really, like you guys get paid like a PGY6 salary, which is definitely a lot higher than the fellowship salary that I was offered at other places. But you also get like post-call days. So it's definitely like a benefit to you guys as residents. The only downside is, of course, like for those of you who are enrolled in CBD, there's a little bit more paperwork in that regard. And then the other thing that's interesting is that at the end of this residency, you can apply to do your exam, and that's actually not going to be until the September after you finish the 1-year residency. Oh yeah, so I just wanted to go over like the numbers. So I was like astonished to see that actually at University of Montreal, they have like 8 spots. I don't know if anyone can confirm that, but that's amazing. But yeah, there's tons of spots. Even here at Dal, we take up to 2 some years. So in terms of developing your application, I would definitely suggest joining the CIR. I thought it was like so helpful. It gave you so many opportunities to practice like presenting. Like they have those angio clubs you can do like once a month in the evening. So you could just like go up to your staff and ask like, hey, do you have a cool case, and bring it to present. Sorry guys, my throat. One sec. And also, I don't know if any of you are, as you guys are going down to Utah for SIR, but SIR is like amazing as well. You can like submit your research. My research that I presented there was like super brief. I only had like a 50-person survey, but they accepted it for an oral publication or oral presentation. So definitely if you can like go to the SIR conferences and network, I found that to be really helpful as well. And yes, this is just a little plug for the CIR meeting that's happening here at the end of May. So in terms of the application process, U of T is usually the earliest, and they usually start and have like a due date in July, and then the rest of them are going to be like in August and September, and then you do your interview in November, and the results are usually emailed in like January. So in terms of what you need, typically they require like 3 reference letters. One would be from your PD, and I would say to try and get as many as you can from your IR staff, just so that you can show like, I am really interested, I'm committed to the career, and also they can recognize like each other's names when they're reviewing the files. And then also your CV, I would recommend trying to keep that like under 4 or 5 pages, just because I've seen like my dad review some of the publications, and he's literally there just like scrolling on his iPhone in the evening looking at them whenever they come out. But that's just him. He might be like more laid back with that, but maybe just trying keeping them like a little bit shorter. So like for example, when I looked at my CV, I cut out stuff from like high school and like in the early days of undergrad, just to try and keep it like more recent things. And then in terms of my cover letter, I also tried to keep that quite brief. So I just had that as like, I think 3 paragraphs and fit it all onto 1 page, just so that it was like easy and quick for the IRPDs to go over. And then in terms of the IR interview preparation, I do find it's helpful if you can like read through websites and like articles on vascularnews.com. That's like really the only place that I looked at, just so that in case they ask you like, what's a new cool procedure that like you've heard about, that you can like speak with confidence on like, even just for example, like 1 topic. And also they might ask things like, you know, artificial intelligence, like how do you think that'll be helpful for your practice in IR? Or say if you went to a recent conference and you put that on your resume. I did have some people ask like, oh, what's something you learned at a conference? Or like, did you meet anyone and talk to anyone? They also will ask you sometimes like, do you know any fellows who've been through our program recently? So try and network as much as you can. Definitely, you guys can like reach out to me and ask me if you are looking towards a certain IR fellowship and you don't know anyone. I definitely have like a huge list of people who I harassed during this process for help. So I can definitely help you out in that regard. And other questions they ask are like, can you maybe tell us like what specifically you want to do in IR? Because IR is so broad, like you can do a focus in arterial work, or you could do like urogyny. It's like super diverse even within this one field. So if you just have like a little niche area of interest and that you could speak on, I think that would be really helpful. And some advice for the future. I found like people were, and I don't know why, but like very overwhelmingly negative whenever I told some of my staff that I was applying to IR. I had one staff who literally like pulled up the schedule and was like, look how much you're going to be on call compared to me. Like, why do you want this career? So I think if you're wanting to do IR, you just have to learn how to like tune out the noise. And I'm not quite sure where like the negative stigma came from applying to IRs, because like as I mentioned earlier, you can create whatever kind of career you want. You can do like 1 day a week of call, or you can like apply to IR jobs that have no call requirement. So it's really like you can create your own career. And I would say also like don't stress about jobs. Like I'm a very average to below average resident, and I've had like 4 hospitals reach out in my R5 year. So it will happen to you all. You'll probably get way more job opportunities. And as soon as you start fellowship as well, I heard that you just get like emails like every day about jobs. So definitely don't stress about jobs at this time in residency. And I'd say like take one step at a time. Like for example, last week we did our Royal College exam. So like one step at a time, like get your exam, get your DR, and then move on to IR. And that's all I had. And this is my email here in case some of you guys need help with anything.
Thank you, Francine, for all your tips. So as we said, we're going to take the question at the end of the session. So we can go on with our next speaker. So Lisa, it's your turn.
Okay. Let me just see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Just gotta say, I'm not sure if I agree with Francine saying that she's an average or below average resident. But everything she said, I totally agree with, other than that. Let me just show you guys my slideshow. I'm going to be having a little bit of a different talk today. Francine did a great job kind of going over the general steps for applying for a fellowship. This is kind of more like the hidden curriculum and kind of unfiltered tips and tricks for how to be successful in your application and in your interview. And just so you know, all of the following are my own thoughts and opinions only. Okay, so we're going to go over how to prepare for your fellowship application, what to gather for your application very briefly, and some tips for success, which is what we're going to be focusing on. All right, so how to prepare for your fellowship cycle. So in PGY 1 to 3, you will decide whether you want to go for a fellowship or not. In my experience, the job market right now is so excellent that as long as you don't want to work in an academic community or a big city, you could probably start making money immediately without doing a fellowship. So by March of PGY 3, you basically want to have a specialty picked out, and that's probably the latest you could go, maybe even by May PGY 3. And you have to go through several decisions. One, like, do you want to work in an academic center or community center in the future? Do you want to go down the IR route or not? And that's kind of a big decision to make. And then something you have to think about is what is the lowest common denominator in the fellowship that you pick? Like, for example, if you go into neuro, you're going to have to read a lot of TIA scans. Maybe you love everything about neuro except for TIA scans. So you might have to rethink your fellowship choice. And another thing to think about is location and jobs. Not so much nowadays, but back in the day, if you really want to work in a particular hospital or particular location or city, residents would reach out ahead of time and see what kind of fellowships they would want you to do in order to get a job there. And then you kind of work out a little thing with a place where you want to get hired at. How to prepare for your fellowship cycle. So you want to start doing your research starting around PGY 3 in March. What I did was make an Excel sheet of all the fellowships, all the deadlines and application requirements for each program. If you want to dual apply in Canada to 2 different types of fellowships, for example, a body fellowship and like a MSK fellowship, that can actually be a little bit risky because it looks like you're not really committing to anything, and the PDs do talk with each other. And of course, you want to speak with your seniors who already went through the fellowship application process for advice. You want to contact your like 2 to 3 reference writers in PGY3 March or April, just to give them a little bit of a heads up. And I sent them my Excel sheet with all the deadlines and who to address their letters to. Don't be afraid to give your staff gently monthly reminders, because they're busy people, and sometimes, you know, they forget that they have to write you a letter, and make sure you thank them in an email or something for writing a letter for you. Your application will basically entail 3 reference letters, including one from your program director, a cover letter, which is usually you have to address it to, well, they'll actually tell you on the website who to address it to, your CV, and some miscellaneous stuff, which is different for each program. So just look on their website to see what you need. And to submit your application, it's usually going one of 2 ways nowadays. You email it to the fellowship coordinator, and your reference letters writers will send a separate email, or you'll use their online application platform to upload your information. And the due dates in Canada are still different for each subspecialty and school, to my knowledge. And usually the due date is between July and September to October of your PGY3/4 year. So my tips for submitting your application for best success: you want to stay very organized. Title your email with the city that you're applying, the fellowship you're applying for, the year of fellowship that you're applying for, and your name. And I would title your files the same way too, so it's easy for them to look for your files. And now the part that I really like to talk about is my tips for success during residency. And the following are my opinions only. One of my really smart neuro staff, Dr. Tay, told me that residency is like a fishbowl. What he meant by that is that basically, as soon as you start residency, all the staff are like observing you and trying to make an opinion on you. So you want to really show your best self and do a really good job day to day. So like everybody has a great impression of you, because all the radiology community in Canada is pretty small and people do talk. And my second tip is you want to work hard and be kind to everybody, from like the techs to your staff to your co-residents. And 3, make sure you work on your interpersonal skills and emotional intelligence in residency, because those are almost just as important as your radiology skills if you want to succeed in the future. This is the Punnett Square of Truth. Those of you who have gone to University of Ottawa for med school might have seen this before, but this like still holds true when you apply for fellowship. So basically the Punnett Square goes like this, like on the top it's not annoying, annoying, on the side knowledgeable, and not knowledgeable. And when you are applying to fellowship, you want to be knowledgeable and not annoying. So this is how you want your staff to think of you, and when you interview, how you want to come across. And failing that, you want to be not annoying and not knowledgeable. It's actually better to be not annoying and not knowledgeable than annoying and knowledgeable. So that's a key tip to kind of put into your brain throughout residency. And then other tips for success during residencies: make sure you have hobbies and community involvement outside of work. It looks really interesting on your CV. It gives you something to talk about during interviews, and it will keep you from burning out. My tip, if you're a younger resident, is to make sure you present at conferences. You have 7 educational days per year. Make sure you use them. Every research thing that you present should be presented at a local conference, a national conference, an international conference like RSNA. And you don't have to have a first author pub to have an impressive looking research on your CV. Sometimes volume is key, because the people looking through your CV are looking through a lot of different applications, and they won't like read everything super closely. But if you do have a first author pub in like radiographics, of course, that's going to look amazing. So remember that your program director write your letter, so don't like annoy them or piss them off during residency. And another tip I have is to join your CARMS committee. Volunteer for your CARMS committee if you can, because that really exposes you to what makes a good cover letter and what makes a good CV, and what makes a person good at interviews versus May interviews. So yeah, that's a great tip in my opinion. And you have to choose your references carefully. Of course, you guys already have experience doing this, but just to reiterate, Make sure your referees like you and they want you to exceed. Maybe ask your senior residents to see which staff have a proven track records with the fellowship that you're applying to, and use the same staff who's already gotten your seniors into the fellowships that they wanted to get into. And maybe pick somebody who knows someone at the place that you want to go. And you want to prepare your updated CV and your Excel information sheet and send them to your referees. And make sure you do not take a letter from them. If you ask them for a reference and they give you this look, like don't do it. Follow your instincts. And for the cover letter, this is your chance to talk about your soft skills. Like I agree with Francine, it doesn't need to be more than 3 paragraphs, but you can like kind of humble brag about your volume on call, your procedural ability, why you want to go to the CityM program, and why you like the subspecialty that you're chosen. Don't be too generic with why you chose the city. And in Canada, your cover letters should be different for each program. I know in the States, sometimes they use the same cover letter and they just change the name on the top. But in Canada, you should probably just at least change your cover letter a little bit for each school that you're applying for. I would say only use ChatGPT for grammar and syntax, and ask it for a conversational tone. I know we're probably all using ChatGPT to help us edit our application nowadays. And triple check that you address the letters and everything to the right person. As for the CV, this is your chance to really show off about yourself, including your research. Really emphasize any teaching you've done, including rounds and tumor boards, any leadership opportunities you've had, and absolutely make sure that you have a hobby section. The people reading your CVs love this section because most residents are very, very, very similar on paper. So sometimes the hobbies section that will help you stand out as a person. So I say to keep your CV 2 to 7 pages. Make sure it's not too bare bones because most people will actually pile a lot of information on their CV. So if your CV looks too bare, it might look bad in comparison, but don't go overboard either. I'd say you can go from undergrads onwards. Do not include anything from high school unless it's like a job or if you want like a really impressive scholarship. And you don't have to include your picture of yourself on your CV. Make sure you stay organized on your CV. This is just an example of my CV, just to show you how I did the headings. And these are the CV headings I had. Since this is being recorded, you could go back and pause later, just look at the CV heading and the way I organized it, which I think is a good way to organize a CV. And just to reemphasize, I think that the part at the end where you talk about your hobbies, like your language, interests, personal development, I put all my hobbies and things here. This is just like a huge part of my CV actually. And this is just to like show the places I'm applying that I'm an interesting person. And evidently it worked because I got an interview offer for everywhere I applied. Okay, and then your offers will come in. I suggest you apply everywhere for the program of your interest. Like if you want to apply for MSK, literally apply to every place in Canada that has an MSK program. But you don't have to accept every single interview. Like you will get kind of tired if you have to do every single interview. So you could definitely decline some interviews. And I just asked ChatGPT to like write my declining letters because I find that super awkward to do. And tips for interview success is make sure you test your interview equipment, make sure you have good lighting, absolutely clean your room, make sure there's no clutter, dress professionally, and know your elevator pitch because every single interview, the first question they usually ask you is tell me about yourself. And you have around 2 minutes to give them a little bit of a preamble about yourself and keep them hooked. Your behavior in breakout rooms are observed during interviews. There's some schools that does have breakout rooms, so make sure you are professional all the way through. And they will observe your body language. I'm like pretty relaxed now, but like during interview, I will like sit up straight, I'll smile, I'll make eye contact with the camera, and I won't fidget. So just something to keep in mind for the actual interview. Try not to be too nervous during the interview and always answer the question that was asked of you. And at the end, when they ask you if you have any questions, make sure you ask engaging and unique questions. And your one key goal during the interview is to just exude the aura of I'm a normal resident. I will be a normal fellow and a responsible fellow, and you wouldn't mind sitting in a room with me for 12 hours. So another pros of success is that most interviews will succeed or fail in the first minute because people will make that first impression of you. Body language is extremely important. Before you do the interview, think about 3 things about yourself that you want the interviewers to know, and maybe think of places to bring that up. Approach the interview as if you are the best candidate for the spot, but no arrogance. And if you're basically a nice and normal person who makes the interviewers laugh, they will have a good impression of you. That's what my approach to life is, that I might not be like the smartest resident or the most successful, but I can be like the most charming resident, and that's usually enough to do well in interviews. And thank you guys very much. If you have any questions, make sure you email me. By the way, I did apply to MSK, and I'm going to MSK in Toronto in this July. So I'm very excited to see Francine in Toronto.
Thanks, Lisa, for all your tips. I'm pretty sure a lot of people took notes during that talk. We'll go with Giovanny now.
Okay, 1 second. I'm just trying to share my screen. That's not the one. Sorry, guys. I don't know why it's doing this. 1 second. Now, okay. Can everyone hear me well? Yeah, my name is Giovanny. I'm one of the PGY5s here at the University of Calgary, in Calgary, Alberta. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some specific details about the application for fellowship in the United States. Personally, I'm going to the United States and starting my fellowship in pediatric interventional radiology in July. So before moving forward, I just want to make you aware that we are not going to talk about the process and what type of documentation you submit to the different programs. That's widely available in the internet. I'm just going to say that it is a very similar process as the one we have here in Canada. So as you know, there are programs that are through the match and programs outside the match. The Americans have their own system, which is ERAS, and it is the same system that they use for residency applications. So as I said, it is just a matter of you asking yourself, what do you want to do? And if the answer is that you want to do your fellowship in the United States, you have to evaluate the programs, contact the programs, classify those programs in 2 groups, wherever they go, just to make confident which programs are going through the match and which ones are not, and what particular requirements they have individually. So once you have gone through that, you have secured your interview, and you are fortunate enough to have secured the position there, you will have to face, I guess, the most complex part, the one that nobody talks too much about, and the one that is not that clear on the available information online. So before moving forward, you just have to ask yourself what you want to do, where you want to do it, when you want to do it. And if you're happy with your answers and you're deciding that you're going to move to the States for a year, then after securing your position, you will have to face this. So INTALT is the government organization that actually deals with international applicants in the United States. As you know, when you go to train there, you are a guest by the American government and whoever is employing you. So there should be, and there will always be, a middleman between the hospital where you're working for and or working at and yourself. And that person is your sponsor. So normally, if you're moving to the States for any type of position outside medicine, your employer is your sponsor. In this case, it is not. Okay? There's this particular organization, which is the only sponsor for international graduates in the United States. And everything goes through them, except if you are going to the States, sponsored directly by, let's say, you have secured employment in Canada, they're sending you there to train in a particular field. Though that institution becomes your sponsor, and the process is a little bit different. But assuming that you have secured your position, then this organization becomes the sponsor. So how do they do it? They do it through this Bridge USA Exchange Visitor Program. This is an initiative of the U.S. Department of State and is regulated and overseen by them. So it is kind of a big deal. And as you know, after the new administration, students have been targeted in the United States, and they are very strictly scrutinized, specifically about what your role is going to be, what the benefit is going to be for the United States, and if there's any type of risk or you represent any type of threat. So following the news very closely, it is my best advice for you at this point, because the rules are changing every day. But so far, Bridge USA is in charge of the visitor program. So they have several categories. I'm not going to talk about the ones that do not apply for you. You are going there as a trainee, and as a trainee and your nature of being a physician, you're considered J1 exchange visitor physician. And the program is basically an initiative that allows you to learn about the American culture, share your own culture, acquire abilities or skills that you're not able to acquire in your home country. And for such, you are obliged to go back. You, at the moment you apply for your J1, you sign a form in which you guarantee to the Department of State that you will return to your country of origin. And the idea of the visitor program is basically to bring those abilities so you can develop medicine in your home country. So this is not a stepping stool to acquire permanent residency in the United States. If you're willing to move to the United States, then you have to be aware that there are multiple implications. It is always possible, but it is a very hard and challenging process that usually involves hiring an immigration lawyer and going through particular routes. So once again, that's the role of InThealth, to give you that experience. It works for medical residency and as well as fellowships. And for them, this is you. This is someone that is not an American citizen. You graduated from a medical school outside of the United States. You have fulfilled the requirements from the ECFMG, or the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduates. That's the last item, ECFMG certified, unless obviously that you have graduated from a Canadian medical school, which is different. But once you have satisfied all those requirements, you're considered an alien physician and a person that is eligible, a candidate is eligible for training. So how do you travel there? Your immigration status is a temporary status. You're going on a non-immigrant visa. The only visa that is sponsored by the program is a J1 visa. So if you have any intentions of applying for an H1B, that's not the case. This is the only one you can apply for. As I said, because it is designed to offer you the cultural exchange, you are obliged to leave the country as soon as you're done with your training. And the fact that you have been offered a position there does not involve that the Department of State is going to grant you a visa. So if they have any doubt that you are not going back or that you represent a threat, they can deny it. So while these are the conditions, you have to go back. You are obliged to reside outside of the United States for 2 years. That doesn't mean that you cannot travel as a tourist, but you cannot reside there. You can't renew your visa. Let's say that you want to do 1 more year of fellowship, or you want to switch specialties, but not for more than 7 years. If you are going there and your employer, the hospital where you're going to work, does not offer you benefits, then you're responsible to guarantee your health insurance and life insurance. And finally, there is this national database that is called SEVIS, in which you will be registered. And every single change, either residence, location, employment, you are obliged to report to them so they can update and have the most accurate information about you. So how do you start this process? So there is something that if you can take from this talk, this is the most important part. You will be asked to register through OASIS, which is the online platform that ECFMG has, and you do everything through there. And you will be assigned a person in the institution that deals with international graduates. That person is your point of contact. As soon as you are admitted to the program, they will tell you who that person is. That person will contact ECFMG, they will open a file, and then they will, depending on your situation, ask you for a number of documents that include your CV, you include your letter of offer or letter of employment. And one of the documents that they always ask for is this statement of need. You can apply for it online. The problem is most of people that are admitted to programs in the States, they are not aware of this, and May comes and they're rushing to get their statement. So apply for this early. And once you have everything and you have submitted everything, your point of contact is going to issue this form, the DS 2019. This is a physical form that is signed, wet ink, and has to be couriered to you. And this becomes like one of the documents that you have to show at the port of entry, either at the airport or at the port of entry if you're driving there. Canadians are not required to apply for an interview at the consulate. They can just bring this Canadian passport, the form, the payment, and the letter of offer to the port of entry, and they will be granted an I-94 J1 visa there. These are the insurance requirements, which basically they're published online. One word about moonlighting: you are not allowed to moonlight. So even in your institution, you can only work in the approved training program, not any additional call or working in a different institution. And that's considered a breach of the contract, and they can cancel your visa because of that. As I said before, any change in your status should be reported to the electronic platform within 10 days. You have to notify the commission for any changes in your training program. You are obliged to keep legal status in the States. And if you want to go deeper into the process, I will refer you to this publication and on the Intel website, which is the reference guide for G1 physicians. Finally, remember that laws apply to everyone. Any violation or breach of the law will threaten your immigration status. They can basically cancel your visa, specifically even a felony. So there are people that have been even deported for minor, like traffic tickets that were not attended on time. Obviously, you have to pay taxes. You're responsible for that because you're receiving income in the States. And the law basically for driving is the same as here in Canada. So that was just a brief review of the process, and I will be happy to take any questions that you may have at the end of the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni, for that clear explanation of the American situation and the paper that we need. Thank you. So now we can go with Bill.
All right, hey everyone. I'm going to share my slides here. All right, so my talk is about how to choose your fellowship and your job. I think these are both going to be interesting topics to you guys listening today. Starting off, these slides were reused partially from my other CAR talk on how to get a job. And I think the two topics dovetail a lot because ultimately you have to remember what the end goal is, right? And I think there's a lot of time we spend in medicine and in residency just being academics. But as soon as you come out into real life practice, that completely changes. And now you become, a worker, like you're doing a job. And beginning with the end in mind is a very useful principle to live by. And I think that's been really useful in terms of guiding the path that I went A bit about me. I'm a MSK fellow here at University of Southern California. I'm like midway through, and I have accepted a job back in Vancouver at Royal Columbian Hospital. It's it's a tertiary center that also does general practice, so it's a great place, and I'll talk about it later. But in terms of the way you think about getting a job is, I think there's four main categories you can think about: resident competency, personality, fellowship, and connections. And all these are things that are going to be, you will, continue to develop throughout both residency and fellowship. In terms of resident competency, you can break this down into your diagnostic and procedural skills. And under diagnostic skills, you've got accuracy, and under that, sensitivity and specificity, speed, and your detail of reports. You can kind of think about this as different stats that you have in your video game character. So different people are going to have different levels of stats, and that is going to be attractive to different types of groups. So something you can think about later. We'll focus a little bit more on the fellowship part for this talk. In terms of your diagnostic skills, I think when you're in your fellowship and you're developing these, and obviously if you're still in residency now, remembering that community practice volumes are high, I think is something that is easy to get lost in the weeds when you are at a big academic center doing your residency or your fellowship. And it's easy to just pick up a few studies, be very detailed, but not actually pick up a lot of volume. And when you hit community practice, you're going to have a rough transition. My fellowship was delayed by a couple of months because of some visa credentialing stuff, which we'll talk about later. But so I spent a couple of months working as staff at the group that I'm going to be joining. And yeah, like when we're on call there on the weekend, there was one, I went back over Christmas and I read like 35 CTs and 280 plain films in a day on call. So it can be busy. Just don't forget about that. I think another thing to think about in fellowship is to work on plain films. I think this is something that easily gets lost in the weeds, or people just kind of let it fall to the wayside, because there's so much to learn in terms of cross-sectional, obviously, and that's where all the cool flashy stuff is. But not forgetting to try and pick up some plain films, and this is something in fellowship that's really important too. So as an MSK fellow, I will try and ask staff about like, oh, what would you have said about that, radiograph if you just had that and you were just looking at that prospectively. Like sometimes if you're picking up an MR or something, going back to the initial plain film and saying like, hey, what would I have said if I was sitting in the community and I didn't know what this was? Learning how to be flexible with reporting styles is really valuable. And I think that was something that I really took away from fellowship here, is that I saw a lot of different reporting styles. I think that in the US, reporting styles are a little bit more varied than in Canada, just because people come from so many different training backgrounds. So that was really interesting. And I think it's good to learn how to dictate in different styles, because in the end, you're going to be delivering a report to your clinician, which is the consumer. So you want to be able to tailor things and be flexible depending on where you end up. Procedural skills, I think this is going to be a key component to think about when you're choosing a fellowship, because procedures are what makes us irreplaceable. And this comes into play with both teleradiology and AI. I think that coming to the US really opened my eyes to the extent of teleradiology out here. There's a lot of jobs that are like completely remote nowadays. Even University of Southern California has a few positions of people where they're just completely remote. And most of the jobs have some remote component. But what I've realized is they always need a person on site, and that is to cover procedures. If you're not doing any procedures and you're completely remote, that's fine. And there are lots of jobs that will offer you that, but you become a commodity, right? Like if someone in Minnesota can do that same thing that you're doing now, then why can't they just hire someone else and who like pay them less, And then AI is the other thing that procedural skills will index you against. So when you're doing your fellowship residency, try to learn a broad spectrum of procedures, try to become competent and be able to be independent with them. If you understand what to do for procedures, but you can't do it independently, they still can't leave you on site alone, right? You have to be able to do it on your own. And you want to think about fellowships that are going to give you that procedural skill. In terms of choosing your fellowship, in terms of what field to go into, I would recommend going with something that you're interested in. People will talk about what groups need right now, but the needs of groups will change over time. And since fellowship selection happens so early nowadays, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen a few years down the line. In terms of going away for fellowship, and particularly going to the States, I don't think it's necessary, not necessary at all. I think there are a lot of great fellowships in Canada. And in terms of even just leaving your home province or city for fellowship somewhere else, I don't think that's necessary either, but it could potentially be helpful for bringing back new skills and seeing new perspectives. So I think the two things you would think about are if you're planning to get a job at your training hospital, like the hospitals that you trained in during residency, if that's where you want to work one day, then it is actually beneficial for you to go somewhere else for fellowship because you're going to bring back a different set of skills. People kind of liken, staying in one place to like doing R6, right? So it's like you've already learned your abdo staff's like way of reporting CT abdo pells, so you're not going to learn as much in terms of new skills or new perspectives. You still will learn a lot, but I think there is some value there. And then the other thing about going away for fellowship, a potential disadvantage is that you don't have as much ability to network in town with groups that you might want to work with if you are planning to come back. So if you're really planning to, say, live in Vancouver, then if you did your fellowship in Vancouver, then you would have the ability to stay in contact with the groups that you're interested in, potentially show up, do moonlighting, help with call or whatever on the weekends, that kind of stuff, if that is in your plans. Okay, in terms of what to look for in a fellowship, I think that breadth of cases and procedures is really valuable. And this is something where it'll depend on what type of fellowship you're going for, like which field. So figure out what this is for your fellowship by asking like current level fellows in that field. But for MSK, you want to look for MRI volume. So no one gets enough MSK MR volume in residency. So you want to choose a fellowship that does a lot of that. And that was one of my reasons for wanting to come down to the States, was that we don't do a lot of MRI in our fellowships back in Vancouver. So I wanted that experience. Tumor, so for MSK, you want to get comfortable with sarcomas, you want to get comfortable with rheumatology, and then sports imaging, and then being able to do injections under all modalities in any joint, pretty much. In terms of the size of the fellowship, I usually like recommending going for a larger center. I think that you want to see those high-level cases when you're a fellow. You are going to have plenty of time to look at like pedestrian stuff later, but you want to see like the rare and exciting things while you're a fellow. Rounds are another thing to look for, and I realized that a big thing that groups will want from you when you come back is to cover rounds for a certain field. So like if you say are applying for a job with a group and they have like a liver tumor board round, then if you've done a body fellowship, then they're going to want you to run those rounds. So you want to attend as many different rounds as possible during fellowship. And you're really learning what the clinician is thinking, right? Like what they want to see from your reports, what are they interested in, what actually changes their management. I think staff to fellow ratio is another good one to look for in a fellowship that's a little bit underrated. So there are some fellowships that have like an army of fellows and not so many staff. So the fellowship I chose, USC, I think we have like 8 staff and 2 fellows. So that's like a pretty awesome ratio. Whereas I know other fellowships where you might have 4 staff and like 9 fellows. So a better staff to fellow ratio means more teaching for you. Another thing to do is to try to talk to groups that you're interested in early to see what they do and what they might be interested in you bringing back. So this will depend on where you're thinking of living and what kind of jobs you want to apply for, but you should reach out early in residency. I think earlier the better, but somewhere like PGY 3 or 4, and just start communicating with groups, making friends, building those longitudinal relationships, and seeing what they are interested in, because that could affect what kind of fellowship you do. In terms of the bit more details about MSK fellowship match, the fellowship match timeline, so we do, it's a match, and the timeline is different from Canada is the key thing. So match day is in June, whereas for Canadian fellowships, people are accepted on a rolling timeline. So a lot of people have their fellowships confirmed like in the fall or winter. So that was a big problem for me, because I would basically have to fish or cut bait, like choose one or the other. The other option would have been for me to line up a Canadian fellowship. Like, this is something that people have done in the past, where they would line up a Canadian fellowship and then pull out of it later when they got a US fellowship that they wanted. I didn't do that. In the end, I didn't want to like burn bridges with at least with my Canadian groups back in Vancouver, but it's something that people have done. In terms of the visa process, obviously this is changing a lot, as we had a great talk on just now. I would recommend staying on top of that. My experience with the visa process is now outdated, because I got an H-1B visa, and it sounds like we don't do that anymore. So yeah, I won't speak too much about that, but what I would recommend is try to look for programs that have experience with visas, because not all fellowship programs are that comfortable with dealing with fellows from outside of the US. And that's basically what happened to me. Like, USC actually doesn't take a lot of international fellows, which I didn't realize actually. And after I matched, we actually had an issue because something had changed in the visa requirements, and they, for whatever reason, for the MSK program here, they couldn't get a J1 visa, because it's a little like it was a loophole with the credentialing. Like, they have to be ACGME accredited. So I couldn't get a J1 visa, and they had to like get me an H1B, but that was difficult and probably isn't possible for you. So I would just get in touch with programs and try and get a sense of whether they've had international fellows before. It's probably a good sign if your program or people that you know have gone and done that fellowship in the past. And then in California, Californian fellows from Canada usually get delayed in their fellowship by 1 to 2 months because of this annoying thing about the California medical state license. So you have to go to California to get your SSN first before you can get your California medical state license. And you need that California medical state license before you can get credentialed. So that's why I didn't start my fellowship until 2 months in. So I'm actually an off-cycle fellow. One of my friends who's at UCSF, I think got delayed by a month. And I think some fellowships would just give you a research block for that 1 month and not, extend your fellowship timeline. But for me, it was. So some things that you want to think about, and some things that I didn't expect when I went through. So anyways, Royal Clement Hospital is where I work, and we're currently recruiting. So this is my email if anyone is interested in an awesome job in Vancouver with some of the best brads that I know. There's my email.
Thank you, Bill, for your presentation. So thank you all for speaking and explaining your path, your process of how it went.